Welcome to Everyday Enlightenment. I'm your host, Patty Teal. I'm really excited about today's guest. Eric Small has long been active in the community, serving as Vice President and Trustee of a family charitable fund and Trustee of Stress Control Systems, for which he is Principal Instructor in Iyengar Yoga. He's done so much, I can't even begin to tell you but a portion of it. But I wanted to mention that he sat on the Board of Governors at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center and was Vice President of the 1990 National Iyengar Convention in San Diego. At the age of 22, he was diagnosed with MS and soon after became a serious student of Iyengar Yoga, which helped him with the effects of his illness. He's been teaching yoga since the mid-1960s. He is instructed at UC Berkeley, for Los Angeles Unified School District, Beverly Hills Adult Education, and the Iyengar Yoga Institute, Los Angeles, as well as serving on the teaching staff of Iyengar Yoga conventions, both domestic and international. He frequently travels throughout the U.S. conducting yoga workshops and seminars for both MS and non-MS students and instructors. Welcome, Eric.
Well, good afternoon, Patty.
I'm so happy to meet you by phone this way.
Well, I'm looking forward to perhaps one day when you're visiting Santa Barbara that you would be a guest in one of my classes.
I would really love that. I'm doing things a little bit backwards. I took a lot of yoga when I was younger, and now that I'm older, I haven't been doing it, and I really do miss it.
Well, there's no reason for you to miss it even at our age. I'm not assuming that you're as old as I am, but Iyengar Yoga offers this one unique possibility, and that is that it's available to all, whether you're old, young, infirm, or healthy.
And how does it differ from other types of yoga, Eric?
It's based upon the teachings of BKS Iyengar, who was an extraordinary human being. I met him in the 60s when he came to the United States, and I have been a student of his for the last, my goodness, until he passed in 2014, so that's around 55 years. What it makes it different, Patty, is that it's based on very common sense. The postures or the asanas are designed to affect good health. There is a spiritual content, but that's entirely up to the student. But as a student that comes into an Iyengar class, they're first interviewed so that the teacher has a knowledge of what the student is looking for, what the student is capable of, and where they can work together to achieve those goals. In most yoga classes around the United States, the student merely goes to a desk, puts his money down, is told which room to go to. It's a shoot from there on. We've trained the Iyengar teacher that's in a room conducting a class has had 5 years of training, 3 years of teacher training, and then 2 years of supervised teaching by a senior teacher like myself. So they're fully involved with kinesiology, physiology, movement, breath, and therapy. So you're looking at a very well-trained professional. There are other teachers, of course. Yes, I'm not saying that other systems are not valuable, but we're the only one that spends that kind of time and that kind of energy to make sure that the student is safe and learns how to create a practice for themselves. And there's a big difference. That's our difference.
Well, that is a huge difference.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it seems as though every other person, especially young people, and I'm glad that yoga is popular because I'm sure they all have their benefits, but every other person is becoming a yoga instructor. And sometimes I feel they don't have enough training. I mean, you're talking about 5, you say 3 years, and then 2 more years with a superior teacher or a supervising teacher. That's a lot of training. That's wonderful.
It comes from Guruji, BKS Iyengar. It comes from Guruji's message that it's a great responsibility to take on teaching. Teaching in itself is not a natural state. It's something that you have to devote your life to. And his emphasis was that a teacher that's certified by his organization is not just a teacher. That teacher is a professional therapist, and that the goal of yoga, hatha yoga, is to create well-being and health within the practitioner, so that the practitioner in turn can become of service to his fellow man.
Oh, that's really, really quite beautiful. I know we all have our stories, but years ago when yoga kind of was really taking off, I'm going back now, 20, 30 years or more, I recommended a friend take a yoga class, and she went to one, and she was very physically fit as far as aerobic kind of thing. She played soccer, but she got herself in a plow position, just followed the teacher, no individualized instruction, and she really hurt her neck badly. It hurt her for years. So that's not likely to happen, it sounds like, if you go to an Iyengar class and have an experienced teacher guiding you.
Well, also, too, I always encourage a new student to ask for my certification. If you'd like to see my certification from BKS Iyengar in Pune, India, that says that I'm able to teach the following courses, and that I'm also qualified to teach pranayama, which is the science of breath, and that I am qualified to address certain physical disabilities, and it's all there in plain black and white, and so that there is no question as to what the teacher is qualified to do.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're a guest on the show today, because I think all the different types of yoga kind of run together in people's minds. And even though I've taken several different kinds, I really had no idea that Iyengar teachers had this kind of training, and it's just a surprise to me, and a good one.
Well, it's my honor. I'm honored to be a senior teacher. I'm also honored to be an assessing teacher, which means that I'm asked to go to these various venues to look and observe teachers coming out of the training period and now starting their teaching experience with supervision. I'm asked to look at them and to evaluate whether they should go forward or they should need further study. It's very much an Indian system in the sense that you are required to move forward through the system. So if you have an introductory certificate, you are required within 2 years to go for a junior intermediate certificate. Once you're in the junior class, then you're asked to move forward into the upper reaches. So it's always a movement forward. And even I, after 60 years of teaching, I still am required to put in 25 hours a year with a teacher senior to me. I'm still a student. I'm still learning.
Oh, that's amazing. I hope you don't run out of people that can teach you, because you're pretty high up there. So, there might not be anybody left after a while.
Well, it's okay. I'm now 84, and I've reached the senior levels, and I'm content, but I still go to class, and hopefully I may have one more shot at an assessment.
Oh, that's
right.
That's really great. Now, are there very many Iyengar studios in the Santa Barbara area?
Well, there is, to my knowledge, right now, I believe there is one, which is Richard McLaughlin at Santa Barbara Iyengar Yoga Studio. I do believe there are some Iyengar certified teachers at the Santa Barbara Yoga Center, but they have mixed classes, so they have other disciplines that also teach there. So there are several certified yoga teachers here in Santa Barbara. I'm very proud to say that I am the senior teacher.
Of course you are. And where is your studio located?
Well, I teach at Richard's studio on De La Vina Street, and I also have a studio here in my home, which is I live in Burnham Wood Country Club, and I have to say it's quite a beautiful studio, and so I have some classes here, but I haven't branched out into the community to other studios, probably because their venues are full, and so I'm always available for a workshop or for a conference or whatever. I'm always here. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, if a group of people got together and asked you to do a yoga class with them, maybe ongoing, would that be a possibility that you would entertain?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I still teach in Los Angeles. I was one of the founding members of the Iyengar Yoga Institute in Los Angeles. So I'm still on their teaching staff, and I do workshops occasionally there during the year. But since my wife and I have moved to Santa Barbara, I really enjoy teaching here. It is a beautiful community, and it is also a community interested in ongoing service, which is very attractive to me.
Absolutely. If you've just joined us, my guest today is Eric Small, and he is an expert instructor in Iyengar Yoga. Or is there another term I should be using besides expert instructor? Master instructor? What do you call it?
No, no. There's only one. There's only one master, and that was BKS or Guruji. But I am a senior teacher, and I'm very proud to say that I have been teaching now for I guess it's 60 years.
Oh my goodness.
60 years.
Well, you should be very proud of that fact. Now, when I read your bio at the beginning, I noticed that you had been diagnosed with MS at such a young age, 22 years old, and then soon after became a serious student of Iyengar Yoga. It must have been devastating to be so young and have such a serious illness. And then I thought you could tell us that story and how the Iyengar Yoga helps you, and then how you in turn help others who have the same condition.
I think there's a misconception about multiple sclerosis. It can be devastating, but it depends on your attitude and how you're looking at life. Yes, I was surprised, but at the same time, I knew that there was something going on in my systems that was not right. But when we finally agreed, everybody, after many tests and many doctors, everybody agreed that this was MS. And MS at the time was sort of the thing that they dropped. If they couldn't find an answer or a method or a solution, they just dropped it in and said you had MS. I think that I was very lucky in the sense of that I'm an optimistic person by nature, and so I had to look around to see what could I use to continue my life. And I had been exposed to a yoga class when I was at UCLA, and I liked it at the time. And so it came to me that it would be maybe that was the answer. But when I read Iyengar's book, Light on Yoga, what really impressed me was that at the end of every description, and there was always a picture of the asana, and then there was a method how to do it. And at the end of that, there was a word called effect. And then he would outline what this particular asana did and how, when it was combined with other asanas, how you could approach a medical or physical disability. That interested me, and so that's why I pursued it. And when I was lucky enough then to meet him, and he observed my practice, which at that time I was on 2 canes, I had adapted most of what I could do to what I could do. What he was suggesting and the effect of it, I adapted it to what I could do.
Mm-hmm.
So he was really interested in that and asked me if I would be interested to come to study with him in Pune, India. But he said you'll need a year or two to bring yourself up to that kind of challenge. And here's what I'm suggesting. And he went through the book and he made an X on each of the pages that I was to do, and that's what I did. And a year and a half later, I was standing in the front door of the Institute at Pune, and he welcomed me and said, okay, now the work begins. And even though I was in the medical class, I was not in a regular class. And there were other teachers of more experience that had been studying with Guruji, and he would direct the teachers to say to me, he said, okay, take that guy over there and put him over that chair and put a blanket here and put a belt around his right leg and da-da-da-da-da. And I thought, this is like a medieval torture chamber.
I can imagine.
But all he was using were belts and blocks and blankets and some special equipment that he had designed for, to meet particular needs. And being willing to do it and to follow instructions and to put my ego aside and just become as malleable as I could in his hands, I realized after a few months that I was on the way to good health and being satisfied with where I am and what I was doing, and to make my aims, to make what I wanted to do, not to be lofty and far-reaching, but to be very practical and on a day-to-day basis. And when I returned to Los Angeles 6 months later, I was not using my canes. I was still walking with some difficulty, but at least I wasn't falling over. My energy levels would last at least 6 hours a day. My digestion was sound. My thinking was quiet. I was content, but I was also eager to move forward to share what I had learned. And that's when he said, no, you're not ready. And I studied for another 5 years as a student. And then he said, now you're ready for teacher training.
Oh my. Now
so
you're
by the
ready
time
for
I hit
teacher training.
Teacher training.
Oh.
So by the time I opened the first class, I had been studying 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
I was now in my mid-30s, and he one of my visits to India, I was on my way home, and I went into his library to say goodbye and thank you. And he said, I think it's a good idea if you would start teaching people in your community like yourself. I said, thank you, and I walked out, got about 10 steps away and thought, does he really want me to teach other people in Beverly Hills, or does he want me to teach other people with MS? So I walked back in and I said, excuse me, Guruji, can I clarify something? And I asked him, and he looked at his watch. He said, it took you 5 minutes to figure this out. Of course you need to teach people like yourself, but not people in Beverly Hills. You need to teach people anywhere that you can find a student with MS that's willing to spend the time with you. And that was the start of my career.
Wow, that is amazing. Do you sometimes almost laugh? Oh, you sound like you have a great sense of humor when the new yoga teachers are rolled out and maybe they've gone for a couple months training to get their certificate?
I don't laugh because I know that I don't
too polite.
Anymore.
Yes.
I'm too polite, but I do always ask them, do you feel that you are qualified and ready to take on a student that comes to you in all good faith, that is in a walker or has a cane or You need to. I know that you want to teach because you have a great deal of compassion, and that you have a good heart, and that your intent is honorable. But frankly, I believe that you need to have a little bit more training. You need to have a little bit more experience. And my first question is, where and how do you practice? And their answer is, what do you mean practice? I said, well, I'm required when I walk into a class to have already done my practice for an hour or an hour and a half. So when I'm in a class, I am not practicing. I'm demonstrating and I'm teaching. So I don't use the class time as my practice time. Many teachers walk into a room, they have a list of poses, and they say to the students, follow me. So they're doing their practice and having the students, which have no idea or background or ability, to follow them. And so they're being paid by that student for their practice.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a difference.
Sure there is.
There's a vast difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I walk into the room, I've already done my practice. Now I'm ready to teach. And I only teach who is present in my class. Only those who are in my class. Now, I don't expect that student to put their hands down on the floor and kick up into a handstand or a headstand and do the following variations, of which I'm capable of doing. No. I look at that student and I say to myself, this student needs to have a chair, a block, and two belts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's the difference. That's what separates the Iyengar community from the rest of the yoga community. Yeah. I agree with you. When I first started, there were no Iyengar yoga teachers in Los Angeles. I waited 2 years before somebody showed up, but I was also studying at that time. But there were just a few yoga teachers around. But now, yoga is a $16 billion a year industry. Mm-hmm. Hello.
It is huge. There's no doubt about it. Yeah.
Yeah. They're selling you sticky mats and beautiful clothing and special equipment and retreats in the Caribbean and treks through the Himalayas. Come on. Hatha yoga is therapeutic. It has nothing to do with social standing or social media. But I'm glad to see people in the classes. I'm glad that studios are flourishing. But there is also a high turnover of studios and students. Because if you don't have the training and if you don't have your own personal practice, what do you end up teaching after 6 months? What are you doing? What are you sharing with that student?
Yes, that's a very good point. So, Eric, if somebody is listening and they have some sort of a physical problem, might be arthritis or who knows what, it could be all sorts of things. Yeah. Could they feel safe, I assume, with all your knowledge coming to you because you have a little consultation with them before the class or at the beginning of the class? Correct. So you can modify things.
No, it's private.
Oh, it's private.
Yeah, we're in another room. Uh-huh. I don't discuss somebody's problems in front of other students. Usually my students come to me on a separate day and we sit down and we talk and I get a picture of where I'm going to go. Or I can watch somebody coming into my studio and pretty well think, well, I can see this, and I can see that one shoulder's high and one hip is low, and they're dragging the right, and they're looking all over. They're not focused. So I have sort of an idea of who I'm going to be dealing with also. But when they're in a class, yes, everything is individually instructed. Jane, you're doing this. Sam, you're going to use the chair and that belt. Mary, I want you to get 2 bolsters and 2 blankets so that everybody has an individual lesson, even though there might be 30 people in the room.
Wow. I can see why you'd need all that training to be able to provide such individualized teaching. That would take a lot of training. It also
keeps you pretty busy.
Absolutely.
Keeps you pretty busy too. Yeah. But at the end of the class, my assistant always, who's waiting outside to drive me home, always says, when they come out of the class, everybody is smiling and talking, and they don't even look like what they were when they walked in. So what's happening in there? It's a very simple answer. We're sharing knowledge. We're sharing experience. We're setting a foot on the path to good health. And why shouldn't you smile and feel good about that?
Oh, you sound amazing. I really hope I get a chance to go to your classes someday. It just sounds so wonderful. Oh.
It's a good experience. It should be a good experience, and it should be in the sense of Guruji saying that it should be joyful, that what happens in your class should be not that there's lots of laughter and jokes and kidding around. There's a little bit of that, of course, but you need to have a sense of joy. It's a wonderful experience. It's a positive experience. It isn't work. It's work in the sense of joyfulness, that you get something accomplished. And my greatest aim, Pat, is that nobody shows up one day.
That's your greatest joy?
Yes, because I know that they're all home doing their practice.
Wow.
So my job is done. I've done what I've been trained to do.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's
and
really
that is, you're there to learn. You're there in the class to experience. And then you go home and you practice it. And then when you come back, you're going to have some questions. And I'm going to try to answer them so that the teaching experience and the student experience is equal. And so that questions are asked and answers are arrived at and solutions appear. That's about it.
So it sounds like you can take people, such as our mutual friend who has been a yoga teacher herself and practiced maybe herself 50 years. Or you could take someone who's never done yoga in their life and doesn't know anything about it. Is that correct?
Yes. I had a lady today who walked in. She first thought she was in the wrong place, but then she realized that her daughter, who is a yoga teacher, I don't know where or what, but had suggested that maybe she should try a yoga class at her retirement center, was where I'm teaching. And she walked in. She didn't know A from B, but she was willing to join in, and she worked very well with the rest of the students. And one of my students became her teacher, her guide. She said, "Can I help her?" And I said, "Of course you can." And so between us, that person had a great experience. And when we were through, I said, "Well, how do you feel?" And she said, "I feel wonderful, but most of all, I feel happy."
Oh.
To myself, I said, "Bingo."
Bingo. I did it. We did it.
Bingo. We did it. We did it. We did it. And that's what you're looking for. So it gives you a nice night's sleep. You sleep well because you've been of service. You've been of service. You've reached out to somebody who needs to know what you know, and they need to integrate what they've learned into their lives so that they can enjoy their life. And that's what yoga is all about. Self-awareness.
Yeah. Well, Eric, I can't imagine anyone who listened to you who wouldn't want to call you and to learn from you, take a class. So, but I better tell them how they can get a hold of you. Can you share that information?
Yes, fine with me. I believe that you can call me. I think the best one is my cell phone because it takes messages and I can retrieve them. The telephone systems up here in Santa Barbara are a little dicey. You can call me on my cell, which is 310-666-9772. You can call the Santa Barbara Iyengar Yoga Studio on De La Vina Street, and they can take information and tell you what my teaching schedule is. The classes that I hold here in my studio are primarily for people with special needs. Mm-hmm. But there is a teacher who teaches in my studio who teaches a general class. So there is available, if you're interested, it is available in a general class, but there's also a special needs class.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. I am just so honored that you took time to talk to me today. I really am. And I hope you'll get some calls from people who could use your help, because I can tell you have a vast supply of knowledge that you are just willing to pass along. And I hope people take you up on it. So thank you,
Patty. Yeah, my pleasure. And just one last thought. My philosophy is that when I make my transition, my tape will be empty and my students' tapes will be full.
Yeah, that's lovely. It'll just keep going on.
Yeah, take care.
You take care too. Thank you so much. Bye now.
Namaste. Namaste.
Namaste.